Question 3 from AFM revision kit, right? This is a 25 marks question again, so we'll try to finish this question in 36 minutes. So I will be going very fast because this is theory. As always, I will start reading the requirements first. Discuss the factors which will determine whether the sources of finance suggested by the executive directors are used to finance further investment in diagnostic application apps. So here you have to discuss the factors which will determine sources of finance. That means executive directors have suggested many sources of finance and we'll see how they have used the sources of finance. B. Identify the risk associated with investing in development of apps and describe the controls which the company should have over its investment in development, right? You have to identify the risk. What risk in investing in development of apps? And also we have to describe the controls which they should have over its investment in developments. So describe the controls. So the first part is you have to identify the risk. Second, you have to identify the control. Next, we have discussed the issues which determine the information the company should communicate to the external finance providers. Issues, right? External finance providers. Next, we have explained the insights which behavioral finance provides about investor behavior. So it's about behavioral finance, right? And assess how behavioral factors may affect the share price of the company. So how it affects share price for 5 marks. Now we'll see the markings first we'll go through the case study. Quickly we'll read it, right? Bournelorth company is an IT company which was established by the first 10 years ago. It was listed on local stock exchange for a smaller company 9 months ago. So it's an IT company. Okay, and now it is listed on a local stock exchange, right? Local stock exchange. So now the company originally provided support to business in financial service sector. It has been able to expand into other sectors over time due to an excellent service it has provided and a high quality staff whom its founders recruited. The founders have been happy with the level of profit when the IT services are generated. Over time, they have increasingly left the supervision of IT services in hands of experienced managers and focus on developing diagnostic applications. So what they are doing is they are leaving the supervision to IT, right? The supervision of IT to the experienced managers, and now the company want to focus on developing diagnostic applications, the apps. So the founders have worked fairly independently of each other on development work. Each has a small team of staff, and all three want their teams to work in an informal environment which they believe enhances creativity. Two apps which the company developed were very successful and generated significant profits. The founders wanted the company to invest much more in developing diagnostic apps. Right? So the two apps has been very successful and significant profits has been generated. Now, previously they have preferred to use internal funding because they were worried that external finance providers want a lot of information about how company is performing. However, the amount of the finance required meant that funding had to be obtained from external sources and they decided to seek a listing as two of the company's principal competitors have recently been successfully listed. Right? So what's happening here is before they used to use internal funding, but now they have to go for the external funding because they believe that their internal funding is not enough. But they are also saying that they don't want to go for external funding because they have to provide a lot of information to the finance providers. So that's why they are worried about that. So 25% of the company's equity shares were made available on stock exchange for external investors, which was the minimum allowed by rules of exchange. The founders have continued to use the remaining 75% of the equity share capital. Although the listing was fully subscribed, the price which new investors paid was lower than the directors had originally hoped. Right? The board now consists of three founders who are the executive directors and two independent non-executive directors who were appointed when the company was listed. Right? The non-executive directors have expressed concern about the lack of frequency of formal board meetings. So one is the lack of frequency of formal board meetings and the limited time spent by executive directors. So limited time by executive directors. overseeing the company's activities compared with the time they spend leading developing work. The non-executive directors was also like the company's external auditors to carry out a thorough review of its risk management and control system. So they want the external auditor to review the risk management and control system. Why I'm underlining all this is when we need the risk and to discuss the control system, we might need these points. This is why I always tell that start with the requirements first. Then go and start the case study. You know what to find in the case study. And finally, the last paragraph says the funds obtained from listing have helped the company expand its development activities. The competitors have recently launched some very successful diagnostic apps, right? And its executive directors are afraid that the company will fall behind its competitors unless there's a further investment in development. So the other problem is competitors. However, they disagree about how this investment should be funded. One executive director believes that the company should consider selling off its IT support and consultancy service business. So one says that they have to sell off IT support and consultancy service business. One way of funding address this. The second executive favors a right issue, and the third executive director who prefer to seek debt finance. So you have to talk about right issue and debt finance. Three executive directors are suggesting three different ways of funding. One is saying sell off IT support and consultancy service business. Second is saying right issue. Third is saying debt finance. Right? At present, they have a low gearing. So at present, you should understand what they have. They have a low gearing. And the director who is in favor of debt finance believe that there's too much uncertainty associated with obtaining further equity finance as investors do not always act rationally. That's why we learn behavioral finance because it means they don't act rationally. Now, the first requirement is we have to discuss the factors which determine whether the sources of finance which are suggested by the executive directors are used to finance the further investment in diagnostic apps. Right? Before answering, let's go to the marking scheme. How that 8 marks is allocated. So 2 to 3 is for debt issue, 2 to 3 is for right issue, 1 to 2 is sale of IT service business, and 1 to 2 is for selling shareholder wealth maximization and need for further investment. I would say just allocate 2 marks each. Right? Second, you need to talk about risk and control. It is 6 marks. So 3 for risk, 3 for control. Right? And the next is for 3 marks. So it is 1 mark per point. And finally, the last one is for 5 marks. Right? So explanation that behavioral finance departs from national decision making and how it impacts the share price. So now we are going to discuss about the first one. Whenever you start with this, just see that they have started with shareholder wealth maximization and need for further investment. So you need to talk about shareholder investment first, right? So according to traditional finance theory, the directors will wish to strive for long-term shareholder wealth maximization. The directors may not have been fully committed to long-term wealth maximization as they seem to have focused on development aspects which interested them most and left the original business mostly to others. However, now they are likely to come under pressure from the new external shareholders to maximize shareholder wealth and pay an acceptable level of dividend. To achieve this, it seems that the company will have to commit further large sums to investment in development of diagnostic apps in order to keep up with competitors. Right? Now, first they are discussing this. The second, introduction. Now they are going to selling of the IT service business. And just see how it is in different paragraphs. The bold, right? It is in different, using different subheadings. So don't put all the three under one. Use different subheadings with different paragraphs. Selling of IT service business. At present, IT service business seems to be a reliable generator of significant profits. Right? Clearly, they have told that this is a sector where significant profits are being made. So selling it off would be very likely to produce a significant cash boost now when needed. Exactly, when you sell off, now you can get a huge amount of cash because it is a reliable generator of significant profits. You can make a great amount of profits in this sector, IT service sector, if you sell it, right? However, you need to talk about disadvantage as well. This however is very important. You are saying it is advantage, but what are the disadvantages? You need to bring both. You are evaluating both. So however, it would remove the safety net of reasonably certain income, right? Reasonably certain income will not be there. It will remove the reasonably certain income. You are getting an income which is reasonable, right? A certain amount of income, a decent amount of income you were receiving. But now you are getting cash, but it is only one off. Once only you are getting cash. So you're losing that income which you used to get monthly or quarterly or annually. You're getting a certain amount of income, you're losing that. There's an opportunity cost to that, right? It removes the safety from you. When you are receiving a certain amount of income, when you're sure, when it's certain, there is a safety. But when you're not, you're sending it off, the safety goes off. It is removed, right? No security is there now. And mean that the company followed a much riskier business model. This is more riskier now. So the IT service business also offers a possible gateway to reach customers who may be interested in apps which the company develops. Right? They are saying that selling of IT service business might not be good because they are saying that IT service business might also offer possible gateway to reach customers who may be interested in apps. Right issue. If the execute, okay, this seems very long for 2 marks. This is not required, but we'll just read through the answer so that you understand this. See, main thing is understanding, right? We are learning. We all are learning through this. So, right issue. If the executive director wish to maintain their current percentage holdings, they would have to subscribe 75% of the shares issued under the right issue. Even though the shares would be issued at a discount, the directors may well not have the personal wealth available to subscribe fully. Right? So previously they had to seek a listing to obtain enough funds for expansion, even though they were reluctant to bring in external investors, and this suggests their personal financial resources are limited. Right? Why they are going for an expansion? They are obtaining a listing so that they get enough funds for expansion. This suggests that they don't have internal resources. It is limited. However, the directors may need to take up the right issue. They are saying that the directors have to take up the issue. Why? In order to ensure its success. If they do not, it may send out a message to external investors that the directors are unwilling to make a further commitment themselves because of the risk involved. There are also other factors which indicate that the right issue may not be successful. So first they told advantage why right issue is needed. Now they are saying why it may not be successful. The directors did not achieve the initial market price. Right? They are paying at a lower than they did not achieve the expected price, lower than that. That's what it was in the case study, right? So they are saying the directors did not believe the initial achieve the initial market price which they originally hoped for when the company was listed, and shareholders may question the need for a right issue soon after listing, right? If executive directors do not take up all of their rights and the right issue is still successful, this may have consequences for the operation of the business. The external shareholders would own a greater percentage of the company's equity share capital and may be in a position to reinforce the wishes of non-executive directors for improved governance and control system and change of behavior by the executive directors. Possibly, they may also demand additional executive and non-executive directors, which would change the balance of the power of the board. The level of the dividend demanded by shareholders and may be less predictable than the interest on the debt. Right? So that's why they are saying the level of the demand which is demanded by shareholders, this is less predictable. You cannot predict this with certainty, but interest, it is, you can predict. You know the amount of interest you have to pay. Right? So then the interest on the debt. Now they are comparing debt with the right issue. Right? One of the directors is also concerned whether the stock market is efficient or whether the share price may be subject to behavioral factors. So all this they are bringing, they are saying why right issue should not be used. Right? Because they are questioning the directors whether the stock market is efficient, whether the share price is subject to behavioral factors. Right? Now let's go to the debt finance. Wow, debt finance is pretty long. So debt providers will demand the company to paying interest and ultimately repaying the debt. So here you have to pay the interest, you have to repay the debt. Biggest disadvantage. This may worry the directors because of the significant uncertainties. There are uncertainties surrounding returns from new apps. Returns from new apps. You don't know how much returns you will get from new apps. If you take the loan, will you be able to pay back the loan with the returns from the apps? Uncertainty is hugely uncertain. Significant debt may have restrictive covenant built in, and particularly if their company cannot provide much security. The debtors may be forced with restrictions on dividends, for example, which may upset external shareholders. Right? In order to pay back the loan or the interest, what happens is the directors will limit the dividends they pay out to shareholders. What happens as a result because of this? It will upset the external shareholders if they don't get the dividends. Uncertainty surrounding funding may also influence directors' decision. So uncertainty, they are saying uncertainties surrounding that funding. These are the factors which influence the director's decision. So the loan finance may be difficult to obtain, right? But the amount and the repayments would be fixed and could be budgeted. Where is the success of the right issue is uncertain. So this is like your final conclusion. Your conclusion has to be the last para, just 3 lines or 2 lines, not too big. They are saying that right issue might be uncertain success, and they are saying even though loan is difficult to obtain, still the amount and the interest which you have to pay is fixed, so you can budget, you can do your budgeting, right? This is like your conclusion out of the three which you have to go. So it's not a clear cut, right? You're not saying that you have to go by this or this or this. You cannot write it also in AFM. Your sentences has to be like this. You can never be sure, you can never be confident 100% that this method only will work. You are saying both the advantages and disadvantages and leaving it up to the shareholders to decide or the directors to decide. Now let's go to the B. B is for risk and the control. Risk of investing in apps and also how the control they should have over investment in development. Let's see how the answer is. So here, right? So this, it is into two different paragraphs, if you can see 1 and 2. First paragraph they are talking about risk, second paragraph they are talking about the control. So first we'll cover the risk. The main risk connected with development work are that time and resources are wasted on projects which do not generate sales or are not in line with corporate strategy. Right? You know that development work, you waste a huge amount of your time and resources. So time and resources are wasted. Where it is wasted? On projects which do not generate sales or are not in line with corporate strategy, right? Development work, you know, they do not generate sales. So what happens as a result? This from the common sense you can answer. In fact, you have to answer from common sense. You need a bit of common sense also. You need a bit of what do I say, some presence of mind. You need to think at that present time, right? Ideas and risk like this, you have to come up with the risk. It will not be clear cut from the case study that this is the risk, this is the risk, this is the risk. So one risk is this. Now the second risk is directors may choose apps which interest them rather than apps which are best for the business. So this is the second risk, right? Directors may choose apps which may interest them rather than the best for the business. Third, in fact they are giving more than 3, but you have to give 3, right? There is also risk that projects do not deliver benefits, take too long or are too costly. Yes. Then the director's heavy involvement in development activities may have it easier to monitor them, right? However, the dangers with this are that the directors focus too much on their own individual project, do not consider their projects objectively, and do not step back to consider the overall picture. So this is few of the risk. Now let's go to the control activities. The board must decide on a clear strategy for investment in development and needs to approve major initiatives before they are undertaken. So this is one of the control they are saying. They need to have a clear strategy, right, for investment in development and needs to approve major initiative before they are undertaken. There must be a proper planning and budgeting of all initiatives. So proper planning, budgeting, of all initiatives, and a structured approach to development. There should be a structured approach, should not be in a haphazard way. The board must regularly review projects comparing planned and actual expenditure and resource usage. So you must regularly review projects, compare plan and actual expenditure and resource usage. The board must be prepared to halt the projects which are unlikely to deliver benefits, not only running the project or maintaining the project. When you see that the projects are not likely to deliver any benefit, the board, they must be prepared to stop that project. So halt project if unlikely to deliver benefits, right? One director should be given responsibility in monitoring overall development activity without being directly involved in any of the work. So this is another good control system. Only one director for just for monitoring the development process, right? That director who is monitoring the overall development activity should not be involved in any other activity. Only monitoring, right? They are not being involved in all of the activities. They are not saying to the development team, right, that they are supposed to do like this or like that. No, they're just monitoring. That's it. They're not being directly involved. They're not involving themselves in the day-to-day work, how they are working. They're just monitoring. Post-completion review should be carried out when the development projects have been completed. All this, if you see, they are taken from your project management. In SBL also you must have studied, if you have studied SBL before this, right? That project management. So all this post-completion reviews, comparing the monitoring projects, comparing projects, having structure plan, all these are steps of project management. If you're very good in project management, you will be good in answering this part as well, right? So don't, so when you study something, maybe under SPL you have studied, try to link it. This is how you link and you can use it in your AFM as well. Nothing is isolated, everything is connected, right? Even though it's a different paper, but still it's connected. You can use it here. Project management. It is totally project management. It has nothing to do with AFM, if you see. So if you're not having a good idea of project management, you can lose 6 marks here. That's why it's very important that you have knowledge of the other papers as well and use it here. Right? Now, next one is discuss the issues which determine the information that they have to communicate to the external finance providers. It's just for 3 marks. So 3 points will be enough. Right? Let's see. So here, 1, 1, 2, 3. 3 different paragraphs, 3 different points. Communication with shareholders and other important stakeholders such as potential customers may be problematic. The phrases company faces general corporate governance requirement of transparency and has to comply with the specific disclosure requirements of its local stock market. Right? Now the company is facing general corporate governance. So they need to comply with the specific disclosure requirements. However, governance best practice also acknowledges that companies need to be allowed to preserve commercial confidentiality if appropriate, and clearly it will be relevant for the company. However, the less that it discloses, the less information finance providers will have on which to base their decisions. And finally, another issue with disclosure is that product failures may be more visible now. That is one problem, one issue. If you're disclosing it, if you're communicating to the finance provider, what is it? Product failure may be more visible now that the company has obtained a listing and may have to include a business review in its account. So all these are issues, right? The next is asking, explain the insights which behavioral finance provides about investor behavior. You need to have a thorough knowledge of behavioral finance here to answer this and the last one. And it is for 3 marks, right? Now, Seville defines finance behavior, behavioral finance as the influence of psychology on the behavior of finance practitioners and subsequent effect on market. So they are saying it is an influence of psychology, right? Based on your psychology, you act, you take decisions. That is known as behavioral finance, not by rational. You don't take rational decisions. Everything based on emotions, your psychology, your mood, your mind. Behavioral finance suggests that individual decision making is complex. Yes, because decision making it's not rational. So you cannot say uh, you cannot bring it down to one common equation, right? You cannot do it. Each individual might have different psychology. So each individual might see an information or right in a different way from different way. So therefore, the decision making is complex under this scenario. There are so many decision making, and it will deviate from rational decision making. Under rational decision making, individual preference will be clear and remain stable. Yes. Individuals will make choices with the aim of maximizing utility and adopt a rational approach for assessing outcomes because everyone will have the aim of maximizing the shareholder wealth. That is one common objective. So if you so that it's easy to come up with a decision. But what happens when it's behavioral finance? Decision making is based on psychology and is very complex. You cannot define it as one objective like maximizing shareholder wealth, which is rational, right? It is psychology, it is in your mind. It's very different, very difficult to come up to a solution, right? To say which one is right, which one is wrong. What I think right, for you it might not be right. So it's like that. And under behavioral finance, individuals may be more optimistic or conservative than appears to be warranted by rational analysis. They will try to simplify complex decisions and make different decisions based on the same facts at different times. Now the first one is why behavioral finance, right? The last is Ikaman is asking us is how behavioral factors may affect the share price. This question is very important now. This last one out of all, this one is the most important question because this has been repeated many times. I've seen in the past paper. When you go through all the past papers, you will see whenever a behavioral finance question is asked or behavioral factor is asked, this question has been asked: how it affects the share price. This question has been asked. It's a common question. So make sure that you're well prepared for this question, right? And it's a pretty long answer. It's a very long answer. So the company share price may be significantly influenced by the impact of the behavioral factors as it is a newly listed company operating in a sector where returns have traditionally been variable and unpredictable. The impact of behavioral factors may be complex and they may exert both upward and downward pressures on the company's share price. The share price can go in any way. It could go upward, it could go downward. Right? Investors may, for example, compensate for not knowing much about the company by anchoring, which means using information which is irrelevant. But what is the meaning of anchoring? See, all these are behavioral factors, right? There are so many behavioral factors, but you need to answer at least 5. So number 1 is anchoring, right? What does anchoring mean? It's given here, which means using information which is irrelevant, but which they do have to judge investment. That is anchoring. Second, the possibility of very high returns may add to the appeal of the company shares. So second is there's a possibility of very high returns. So some investors may want the opportunity of obtaining high returns even if it is not very likely that they will, right? So this is the second one. Some investors may want the opportunity of obtaining high returns even if they're not very likely that they will. Whenever you know that a sector is very profitable and all, what do? As a result, you tend to invest in that, right? You want to buy shares there because you know you're going to get a high return even if it's not very likely that you will get it. You assume that you will get it because you're seeing a high return. Yeah, right? You see it there as an opportunity. So you are reacting based on that opportunity, what you feel. based on that high return. So that is one of the psychology factor. One of the other behavioral factor. Third, so anchoring is number one. This is number two. The IT sector has also been subject to herd behavior. This herd behavior is number three. Make sure that whenever behavioral factor is there, don't just write common sentences. You need to write this words: anchoring, herd behavior. All these terms need to be used and explained also. Right? So IT sector has also been subject to herd behavior. What is herd behavior? What is the meaning of herd? Herd means everyone is like they are working as a group. You do something because others are doing, because you don't want to feel the odd one out. Whether it's right or wrong, you're just following the crowd group. That is known as herd behavior. Whether it's right or wrong, just because someone is doing or everyone is doing, you feel that that's the right thing because everyone is doing, I also should do. That is known as herd behavior. Notably in the dot-com boom, so they have given an example also, dot-com boom. The herd effect is when a large number of investors have taken the same decision, for example, to invest in a particular sector, and this influences others to conform and take the same decision. Right? Fourth, however, even if the company produces high returns for some time, the fact that it is in a volatile sector, see, even if they provide high returns for some time, you have to understand the fact that it's an IT sector. IT sectors are very volatile sector. Right? The fact that it is a very volatile sector may lead to investors selling shares before it appears to be warranted on the evidence on the grounds that by the loss of chance, okay? On the grounds that by the loss of chance, they will make a loss eventually, known as the gambler's fallacy. So gambler's fallacy is number 4. What is it? See, you might not have any evidence that you are going to get a loss here. Why loss? Because it's a very volatile sector. So what happens as a result, even if returns are high for some time, it's a volatile sector. So investors, they will sell their shares. They take the decision to sell their shares simply because they want to avoid making loss. They have a fear that they're going to make a loss here. It's a volatile sector. Even if there is no evidence, even if before any evidence comes, they take this action, they take this decision to sell their shares. That is known as gambler's fallacy. Right? That is the fourth behavioral factor. Under behavioral finance, the possible volatility of the company's results may lead to downward pressure on its share price for various reasons. So they are saying that because of this volatility, okay, the behavioral finance will have a downward pressure on share price, and it is for various reasons. They have given the reasons also why it will have a downward pressure, because you anyway have to say how the impact of the behavioral finance on share price, right? It could be downward, it could be upward. So these are the reasons. First, some investors have a regret aversion, right? These are the terms which you need to use. What is regret aversion? It is a general bias against making a loss anyway, right? This, it is claimed, means that the level of returns on equity is higher, rather higher than the returns on debt, then it is warranted by the rational view of the risk of equity, right? So they are claiming that the returns on the level of returns on equity is higher than the returns on debt, even though the rational view says that equities are more riskier. Therefore, cost of equity will be higher than cost of debt because more risk is there. Even though rational view says that, but they believe that equity is less, the returns on equity is higher than return on debt. Similarly, under prospect theory, just see the theory they are using. Investors are more likely to choose a net outcome which consists, right? They are more likely to choose a net outcome which consists entirely of small gains rather than an identical net outcome which consists of a combination of larger gain and some losses. So they are saying that it's better to go for small gains, right? Rather than some very high and some loss and some in losses, right? At present also, The company does not have much of a history of results for the market to analyze, even when it has been listed for some time. However, another aspect of behavioral finance is investors placing excessive weight on the most recent results. This is number 5. Investors are placing excessive weight on the most recent results rather than which is more relevant. If the markets react very well or badly to the news about the company, the large rise or fall in the share price may result, which results may also not be sustainable. See, the way the market reacts to the news about a company, it's not sustainable, right? It can be very good sometimes, it can be very bad sometimes. So even if, so based on that, your share price also changes, right? Your share price can rise or it can fall. So that rise and fall in share price is also not permanent. It's not sustainable. It's volatile. It will keep changing. Therefore, they are saying that share price will also not be sustainable, but may revert back over time. So that's it for this. Mainly, we focused about behavioral finance. That was the main topic of today, and we have finished in 36 minutes. I have told you that my aim was to finish this in 36 minutes because this is a 25 marks question. So I finished it in 36 minutes, right? So that's it for today. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Hit the like button. Do share this with your friends, and I'll be coming up with the next video, question 4. Till then, take care.